Here we go, our Friday edition of the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. We are finishing up our roadmap series, and we are going to talk about, honestly, probably the most stable position on the whole team. Ashley, you have defensive backs, corners, and safeties. What have you got for us?
Yes, let's start off by thanking you guys for giving me the easiest breakdown for our offseason roadmap series, because quite honestly, there's one major point we're going to talk about, but when you think about the Browns secondary, like they really last offseason was when they beefed this up, signing John Johnson III, signing Troy Hill, drafting Greg Newsome, obviously all like big moves at the time. And you look at some of the numbers that this secondary put together. They had the top coverage grade as a team from Pro Football Focus. They were 7th in pass defense, according to DVOA. Or in pass defense DVOA. So I just think like there's not a ton necessarily to talk about with moves they might have to make this offseason. But the big one is, what do you do in terms of extending Denzel Ward, given the season he had, and how much that might cost you, I think is like the biggest question mark, quite honestly, with this group. So I definitely think he established himself as the team's number one corner. He could potentially one day be in the conversation for, is he the top cornerback in the league, as long as he kind of keeps going along and manages to stay healthy and keeps improving. So he tied his career high this year with 3 interceptions. Obviously, probably the highlight of his season is that 99-yard pick six that he had against the Bengals in that first matchup. So when you're looking at his market value so far, Spotrac had his value at $18.7 million per year, projecting that deal at 5 years, $93.8 million about. So it would make him the 4th highest paid corner in the league. And we can go over some other numbers for guys, but I think that's about right. I personally would like to see them extend Denzel this offseason to kind of get that out of the way. I think it's one of the most important moves for this defense as a whole to make. So I think that's top priority this offseason, as opposed to bringing somebody in or drafting somebody.
So these are some relatively recent extensions. Marlon Humphrey, 5 years, $97.5 million in new money when he signed his. Marshawn Lattimore, 5 years, $97 million. And all these guys are really about the same age as Denzel, a little bit older. They've been in the league a little bit longer. Tre'Davious White with Buffalo, 4 years, $69 million in new money, and his yearly average is pretty high. And then, of course, Denzel Ward is going to be playing on the 5th-year option at $13.2 million. I mean, Scott, this feels like a no-brainer, right? This almost feels like the Myles Garrett extension a few years ago. It's more about when, not if, right?
Yeah, I think, he's coming off a Pro Bowl year. And beyond that, you have to invest in positions that can defend the pass in this league now. And you have a really good cornerback who's a multiple Pro Bowler at this point. So, yeah, as far as that goes, it's a no-brainer. And I mean, they've already taken steps to make sure that they have gotten better defending the pass, because in 2020 they were super bad, and so now you got guys like JOK on the field, and you've already given multiple year deals to guys like Troy Hill and JJ3. So yeah, I think it's a no brainer. It comes down to timing, maybe it has to do with when they want to clear other space off the cap for the coming year, whatever the case is, but it just seems like it's inevitable and certainly the right move to make.
And Ashley, I mean, they've kind of built this the way you want to do it if you're going to have a big money guy, because now they've got Greg Newsome under contract. His cap hit, the highest it goes is $4 million in 2024. And then, of course, he'd have the 5th-year option, which, like I said, for Denzel is about 13 this year. It's going to be higher for him, but that's just because the cap is going to be higher. I mean, this is sort of the way you want it. You have the high-priced guy on one side, and then you've got a really good corner on the other side on this rookie scale contract for the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, it just was perfect timing, I think, for them to get Greg Newsome when they did, and for him to actually, excel as a rookie. And looking at some of his numbers, he had the 2nd highest coverage grade, I think, from PFF among all rookies, with that minimum snap count added in there. So it's just worked out really well. And I think it would be better to sooner rather than later extend him, as long as, like Scott was saying, that's monetarily feasible. because it just is an inevitability at this point, and he's so important to what that unit does. I think there's a lot of confidence internally in that unit too. Like when I talked to Greg Newsome last week or a couple weeks ago, he mentioned that as the year went on, how different it felt playing together once they actually got to know each other, once there weren't so many guys out with injuries and they got some time together. So I think there's just a lot of optimism, even internally from those guys on the field, that they can do a lot more. And they already had a pretty good year this year. So I think Denzel is obviously a huge, huge key in that.
And Ashley, excuse me, you mentioned DVOA earlier. They actually break it down by receiver. They kind of label receivers number 1, number 2, other, which I'm assuming is just going to be slot or third guys. But as far as covering the number 1 receiver, the Browns were 10th in DVOA. So that's Denzel Ward right there. It's it's working. So I think you make sure you lock that guy up.